My name is Emily and I'm a PhD student funded by the SWWDTP. My journey into research began actually about 9 years, when I started applying for PhD programs, and I applied for a couple, left it for a few years, applied for another one, left it for a year, then applied for this one. So I went after an MA into creative practice to being a creative practitioner, and I think I quite quickly started to miss the depth of input and research and the role of studying and deeper learning really within what I was doing. So the right time emerged when I'd actually amassed enough experience in those kind of roles to put behind a PhD application. I suppose I had a lot of uncertainty about what the PhD actually involved, having been out of academia and university for about 10 years. So I was not familiar with university processes, and although I knew people who had done PhDs, I wasn't overly familiar with the topic myself. I had to do a lot of research on how to actually structure my proposal, having been out of academia for quite a long time. So I had to contact a lot of people in various institutions related to my subject to see if they would have a conversation with me, and that was also part of looking for a potential supervisor. So that was helpful, but coming into the process from the outside of the university system can be quite tricky in terms of just understanding the academic world, I suppose. And being neurodivergent, setting up new conversations can be a bit interesting. Luckily, because I've worked in communication and creative arts, I have quite a lot of skills in that area, but still it can be quite taxing. There is a lot of information out there on various institutions' websites, so I ended up looking at a lot of other institutions and seeing what advice they had on their web pages. And even though I knew which places I was applying to, that was very helpful, because institutions vary quite a lot in the information they put out there for PhD students. And this was not the first time I'd applied to the SWWDTP. I had applied a few years ago and got the place but not the funding. So I had an idea of who they were as a funding body, but it had been so long since I did the application, and I was about a good few years older, so things had changed quite a lot, so I can't really compare that experience. But yes, I had done 3 or 4 previous PhD applications. What you're going to do may change slightly or even quite a lot. The proposal stage is really to show that you're capable of doing a PhD and thinking through something like that. So yes, it has to be tight and make sense and be an effective proposal, but don't worry too much about where it's going eventually, unless you're very lucky and know exactly what you would like to do and how you want to do it. After completing the first year, I have found it quite inclusive working with the SWWDTP. From the beginning, I had applied as having an adult diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum, so I was able to know that and say that from the start, which has massively helped. I've only attended a couple of bigger events. I would say I have found this quite overwhelming. It's hard to run bigger events and make them very inclusive for everybody. And obviously lots of people and lots of noise for neurodivergent people is a bit tricky. In terms of those events, I feel like we're all learning, and the more advocacy included in the DTP schemes, the more that the team will be able to structure these events to suit people's needs better, which actually makes things better for everybody ultimately. the SWWDTP also have they have a very good sick leave policy, and they're very supportive. I haven't had to do this yet, but if you need to contact them to say you're sick or have to take leave because of an illness or mental health issues, or anything that means you're unable to work on your PhD for a little while, I believe they're very supportive in helping with those things, and it's a very good contract supportively as a PhD researcher that you make with the SWWDTP. And a routine is really important. Personally, that often focuses around exercise and getting outside and walking, and little routines such as checking in with certain groups and meetings you might have that happen at a certain time every week. And I'm part of a research group, and we have an online co-working session which happens every weekday morning. So that's open every day, and whoever shows up, and that's been very supportive. And I'm part of a couple of other things. I speak to my supervisor every week unless we need to miss a week. I speak to my second supervisor every 3 weeks, and I feel very lucky because they are both very supportive. So those things give me a sense of routine. My project has become quite a lot about neurodiversity and disability arts. So I am 2 years on from having an adult autism spectrum diagnosis, which explains a lot of mental health challenges and other challenges across my life. I'd probably be diagnosed on the ADHD side of things as well, although I'm not pursuing that. And it's just become a real it's a part of me, so I can't have a perspective that doesn't include that. So and marginalised voices in general are a really big part of my research, and I didn't really foresee how big that would become. I've also worked in various types of support for people with learning difficulties, and I supported an autistic person for quite a while. So I suppose the years leading up to the PhD were subtly bringing out those aspects of lived experience through working with other people, which is part of my professional experience as well. I'm also taking various types of training across the course of my PhD in different aspects of inclusion and accessibility, and I'd begun that before I started my course. So that's becoming another, I suppose, professional practice strand for me, learning how to support people in other ways, give trainings, because I think people who have the lived experience are often one of the best forms of support for other people. And being on the autistic spectrum, amongst probably other things as well, it's a, I suppose, cognition style and way of being that really suits research, that the skills and tendencies seen more commonly across a lot of individuals, which is not by any means everyone's experience because all of us are different, that do kind of match up with research and those more focused activities and writing and those kind of skills. My advice for students facing neurodivergence barriers would be to really research and find out about the different aspects of doing a PhD and how they're going to work at your institution. So things like writing a literature review, going through the ethics process. Depending on your university, those things will be different experiences, and some institutions might be very good at taking students through those things, others might not be so good. So really the things you know you will have to do, like which you find out quite early in doing a PhD, don't wait until the modules or your course or so and so provides you with that information. You might have to find it yourself. I had to find out a lot of things myself, and that was really, really overwhelming in the first year. It took up a lot of the first year, which in a way wasn't ideal. So yeah, just keep asking questions, ask for help, say when you need support. Also remember that you can apply for extensions for things. So if you feel like struggling with too many deadlines and too many, I had a lot of assessment pieces for my research modules in the first year, and I had to get extensions on a couple of them, only by 2 weeks or so, but that really helped because it was just all too overwhelming. But just remember, you can ask for extra time. I would also say be honest, share how you're doing with your supervisors and so on, whilst remembering it's a very specific, quite professional kind of relationship. So obviously you might have to think about what you disclose, but I do share with mine how I'm doing in a general level, just on a little update, because we need to be honest about how we're getting on, especially as PhD students. It can be very isolating. So in a professional way, just sharing any information with a sense of honesty and integrity. I wish I'd known that you probably will have to find out a lot of things yourself, and that probably nobody is going to give you all the information about doing your PhD on a nice plate. So this is going to take some groundwork and some detective work. I wish I'd known that and factored it in, and also that the university systems can chop and change quite a lot. For example, the scheduling of research modules. Also, I wish I'd known that being at university has now evolved into so many electronic processes. So getting to grips with new software, with Blackboard, with things that weren't around the last time I was a student has been a bit interesting. So allow time to get familiar with those things. And that's part of what the first year is about, although I think we can kind of take the load off ourselves by being aware within the first couple of months, or even before that, what systems and processes and softwares you might need to get familiar with. More specifically, I found the ethics process very challenging, and luckily I had a lot of advice from my second supervisor at a different institution where the processes are just more nicely packaged for students. So that's been a bit of a challenge. It's actually made me reconsider the participatory elements of my PhD, because as a neurodivergent person, obviously the ethics process works two ways, because I have to protect myself as well as other people, and every researcher has to protect themselves. So those aspects, even coming from quite a long background in community arts and other sorts of projects involving working with vulnerable people, I suddenly face all these new layers within the ethical process of research, which are very challenging and have made me reconsider the way I want to do things to suit my needs better and cause less stress to me, really, as a researcher, and obviously the people you're working with. I think that's it. I hope that more neurodivergent people apply, because we really need your perspective and voices and experience within research, because it makes the world a much richer place.